righty. Welcome,
Welcome, everyone.
sir.
Yes, it's good to see you all here, everybody that's coming into the room. And of course, we're super excited today to have actually our first guest ever on our live.
I know.
And it's the perfect first guest ever.
Yeah. I'm not going to take it personally, but I do feel a little bit like when the team was like, hey, why don't you all think about having guests on your live stream? I was like, if we'll recall, the live stream was like the Frank and Yvette unplugged. Sometimes Yvette gets to curse, but they were like, no. We think it would be great if other people joined you. Ratings must be low. I'm not really sure. Viewership must be
curse
down.
with you if you want.
No, that's why I think I was okay with it, because we were like, yeah, we're gonna get the perfect right guest to join us for the first time around ever.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No pressure.
Yeah.
The Frank and Yvette show. Oh my gosh. No pressure.
Well, now it's the Jenny and Katie Frank and Yvette show. So, we've got it all.
That goes off the tongue.
It really does. It really does.
It's long, but it's good.
It's good. It's good.
So for those who are watching this later and those who are tuning in live now, we have Jenny Dinnen and Katie Rucker with us today, who are the owners of McKinsey out on the other coast. We're on the East Coast. They're on the West Coast, and longtime friends. I can't really call them alumni of the Future School. They're more like owners of TFSS.
They're co-owners. Clearly, this is indicated
evangelists
on this live stream.
yeah. So, and we can't wait for you all to get to know them a little bit better. As a matter of fact, Jenny and Katie, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we can we can get going on a conversation.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, go first. Yeah, I don't even know where to start. So we'll go kind of all over the place, I guess, with our introductions. But I'm Katie Rucker.
And our names are backwards on there.
But I'm Katie, Jenny. We are twin sisters, which I know it's really tough to tell us apart. And this is all mine, I always say. But twin sisters, and we are co-owners and co-presidents of McKinsey. We're a second generation family-owned business customer insights market research firm. And then we also co-founded this year Next Gen Collaborative. That's a personal growth coaching business for next gen female family business leaders, really just working on some coaching and VIP days. So that's kind of our day jobs, but really at the core and at the heart of who we are, at least both of us personally, of just innately curious, passionate people about the world around us. And when we found the Future School and the programming that you did, we felt like we came home to our kind of people. So thank you.
I love that. We came home. Exactly. That's 100%.
Yeah, and remind me, because you all didn't come to the program together.
Oh, yeah, no. So Jenny came to the program first and she can talk to it, but I'll just jump over it really fast. She did it the last, I guess, in-person one before the world changed in Portland at the end of 2019. And she came back so jazzed up and like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, but I don't have time for this. And I
don't have time for the future.
Got to get some stuff done. So how we split things. Jenny's the sales and marketing and big ideas person. I'm internal operations, more on the to-do list and the day-to-day that's in front of us. And then when COVID happened and the world just drastically changed, I was like, wait a second, what was that thing you talked about? So I went through the program, I think in June of 2020, and it was just, I think for me, it was the right time, because I'm one who it gave me like that opportunity to know I could have been a part of some of this way of thinking and thinking that something like this might have come, one. And then two, for me, it was also so impactful being a part of a global cohort, going through a global event and getting so many perspectives all at that same time. So I truly feel like I'm grateful that I didn't get it when she first got it. Because I felt like for me, it was the right time that it just, clicked for me.
Yeah. Those pandemic programs just hit different. They just hit different that first year. Yeah.
Woof was just right. But it was and because so many things happened. It wasn't just the pandemic. It was then, I remember there was huge wildfires down here in California, but there was somebody from Canada and really talking about, why are we making decisions based at a national level when we should be making them at the global level, because people up in Vancouver couldn't go outside because the smoke was so dense of what was happening in California. And it was just hearing that daily life of what was happening and the reminder of our interconnectivity. It just, it was so impactful.
It's cool. And I am happy that she's on board now because I came back and I will say it was a gift. I mean, I have so many thoughts, but going through that program and going up to Portland and the people that were in the room and what it was. And I think one of the very first things that we did was, I think you guys had us answer this question of there's got to be a better way to blank,
Right.
whatever this was. And I thought there's a whole world room. And then it has now opened up this world to us. There are other people that think like us. I dream in possibilities. I dream in multiples, all of these things. And there was a whole world that you guys introduced us to that. So it wasn't a new way of thinking. It was confirming and then moving on or just taking it to the next level. And just for anybody, it is nice having others in your organization, because I think you guys say a lot of doing featuring isn't like a singular thing. It's a team sport. Yeah. So having others thinking, because I'd come back and try and convince, and I'm now in the confirming business, not convincing business.
Oh, I love that. That's a good one. I'm writing that one down. I'm in the confirming, not the convincing business.
Yeah.
Well, that little
time to convince everybody. Let's just get the ones who somewhat believe already.
I know. Yeah, no, absolutely. And timing is everything, as you said. Yeah. I will just say that this is interesting to have like the two perspectives. And I know ultimately we want to share about your Transformations in Foresight retreat experience, which is a whole nother experience. But I always think it helpful for people, whether they're introduced to Foresight through us or somebody else, that origin story is always so important. And people love to share it. And it's because it's like a critical start in like the rest of your life, so to speak. For me, it was, being at Disney and being tapped on the shoulder to lead this new team and actually declining it at first.
You were in finance to start, right?
Yeah. And I was like, y'all are crazy. Yeah. Y'all are crazy. Why would I go to HR to focus on the future of work? I'm a finance professional, right? A lot of, imposter syndrome there. If I don't have a certificate, why would I go and do something? Right. And so, and then when I went to the first World Futures Conference, again, lots of feelings like, what is this? Is this real? And then of course, a little over a year later, ending up in this guy's airport van.
That's right.
And that's a whole
story. Airport van.
That was the end of her life.
That's the end of that.
End of all of her professionalism. Everything went downhill.
Look at a picture. I've got a visual about the airport van.
And it's exactly what you imagined it to be.
It's crazier than what you thought. She always says I had like a superhero or sci-fi shirt on, which I probably did because I was I was bumming into the airport. Hoodie. I wasn't dressed up yet. So.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to be in the airport van with the head of Foresight of the Walt Disney Company.
Yeah.
But then, now you see how we are.
I didn't feel that important, but So again, I know that we're going to want to talk for hours and hours because we do love you all so much. And there's really just so many places we could take this call. We're going to let this be emergent, which is my favorite word right now. And but also
after all the Norwood Basin interviews, Yvette just walks around going like, were we emergent today? Were we emergent enough today?
but at the same time, I'm like, this is how I approach it, and you'll appreciate this. It's like emergence was on my to-do list for today.
Yes.
He's like, that's actually not how it works.
That's the complete opposite. Yes.
No, my favorite was, and again, small business,
it's on my to-do list.
Yeah, family business entrepreneurs. You guys will understand this, but really, any Foresight practitioner appreciates this. That there's ebbs and flows in the business. There always is, and Frank always talks about we have an abundance mindset, and I truly believe we have an abundance mindset. But it was one of the lulls at one point, and I said to him, I'm like, it's really hard to have an abundant mindset when things are not abundant. It's again, you're sort of missing it.
Yeah, negating the situation. We're not going to manifest well here.
We're all on a journey. We're all on a journey. It's
100%. You know what makes me feel better about that? Just as kind of running a business, running two businesses, doing all of these things, but even hearing. You guys have been thick in this world, and like you said, futures at Disney and running this companies that you still have those ebbs and flows. That is the thing, that this is a lifelong journey of where it is, what it is. Absolutely. It's a new way of thinking, but it doesn't mean, it's kind of saying, we're going to be positive about things. It doesn't mean everything has to be rosy at all times, or everything has to be this amazing. So it can't, and that's okay too, because that's what's coming up in that moment. So I think it's just I'll say reassuring to hear that even you guys who are
I think we try to always that's one of our things is like just try to be ourselves and try to be super transparent, because I think that, you know, whether it's super toxic positivity or like talking about the world is ending, there's like those extremes I don't think are super helpful to people. And I think one of the reasons why I've never felt truly like a finance professional is because like I am effervescent. I want to be myself. I want to be outgoing. And so what I love about Foresight and owning your own Foresight organization and being an entrepreneur is that, you know, this is what you get. Like I'm 50, I turned 50 this year, and it's like, all the fucks are gone. That we have zero. We're the balance
not doing them anymore.
Balance sheet zero. Balance sheet is zero. So that's it, and that's very freeing, I think, to be able to like just be yourself. Now,
you entered your 50s era. This is
exactly.
I love that.
I will say too, and even just kind of without getting too much into the origin story, but at least and I love that. Another word that comes up to me when you're talking about this is you guys have made this very accessible, like this world. And I know like democratizing the future is a big thing for you guys of where this is, but because you've made it into this space that's open and just that word accessible for everyday people, that you don't have to be, you know, a PhD and whatnot. And I mean, it's incredible. And there's amazing people in this world, but it also is, and that's what I love so much, is I went into that room and there were some people in that room in Portland that I was like, what am I doing in this room? But I believe in that Hamilton, like be in the room where it happens. Like I just love it. And it's open this world, but I felt so welcomed and honored to be there, and my voice mattered. I mean, that was a really big thing with Kate. And even Yvette, you said that in the finance world, you know, we're in the data analytics research, a lot of like black and white of where our family business came from, which was great. But we're all dreaming like the world of possibility and and what about and how about. And so it was this, it's hard to put those together. So it's been fun to now incorporate this world into what we're doing, and it still can be valid and rigor and all of these things, but we're in this world. So I loved that.
That's another
you being
place for balance. That's another
cool thing.
Yeah, I think that's why this conversation is so timely. Is look, it's not an either or. You know, life doesn't exist in silos. And at the end of the day, the reason why we're so passionate about making this work accessible and making it fun and not taking ourselves so seriously, this is why we joke around, and like, this is why, is because we fundamentally believe that we've got to do this. We've got to get this in the hands of every single person. This is the only way we are going to solve the problems we're facing, the absolute only way. So it's just, that's the imperative.
Yeah.
Let's go. I love it.
Let's do it.
You know, I want to make a transition into our transformation piece, but just listening to all of you talk for a moment, and I'm just thinking about, and for the listeners and people who will watch this later, that it's so powerful what you're saying about everybody needs to know. I'm going to go a little bit further than I was going to go a second ago. Everybody needs to know that they have this. This belongs to them. This is a birthright.
Yes.
Foresight is a birthright for everybody. And so this idea that in the field, it's like, should we call it a futurist or a foresight? I don't care. I've gotten so past all of that. How many angels will fit on the head of a pin piece? You know, it's like, this is a birthright for everybody. And the main thing that we need to let people know, and people are hungry for this. We were talking about it before we jumped on. People are hungry to be able to see their way through the meta crisis, as Daniel Schmachtenberger and Nora Bates and all of our friends talk about. And the only way that's going to happen is through being and becoming. And this future's consciousness, you know, it's like the universe wants us to think like this. The universe wants us to think this way because it's tied into just the universal way of thinking. And so that's why I was excited about this conversation, because I know you guys get that, and climbing Everest and going on the transformation retreats and all of this, you know, it's just
do we have time to talk about climbing Everest? Because I feel like that needs
I did not summit.
We did.
I did not summit. I went to base camp. So I have stopped.
Still epic.
I was stop saying I just went to base camp, because base camp is still pretty monumental.
I knew you were going to say that, And my response, I knew you were going to say that yesterday. I was
Yeah.
like, she's going to say she only went to base camp. And my response is going to be, did you see me go to base
No,
camp?
no.
You climbed Everest. As far as I'm concerned, you climbed Everest.
I need to also say that I can barely ride the Everest ride at Animal Kingdom without feeling a little queasy. So I need everybody to put this in perspective here.
Yes.
And not dim anybody's light, because you both are amazing. Yeah. But we watched from afar as you trained for that and as you went through that experience. And I'm just curious, like what prompted that for you, and like what you know the impulse for that.
Oh, there's so many, because I did also read in Nora Bateson's book her poem around kinky, and one thing, and I'll then answer this question, but one thing I wrote down was that the clear path in itself is a warning. And I wanted to be able, which I'll send you guys after this, show you this picture at one point. It was probably like 3 days before we got to base camp, and we had moved all the way into like I kept saying there's like 3 different ecosystems you go through, but you're definitely in this glacier, very rocky. There's no path, but you can see, like I took it, of the 2 people in front of me, and then there's people in the far distance, but you can't actually see how they got there, but they did. And I knew that if we just kept going, the path would emerge itself. And it really just is. So there was so much symbolism of that trip itself that matches into a lot of this. But and I think it comes back to, in a few different types of things that we've talked about, is this desire, and really it was around like 10 years ago, about wanting to be more intentional about the future that I wanted for myself, of realizing and truly stepping into the fact that I had the agency to be able to create the future that I wanted. And so there was things I had to acknowledge about myself that I needed to either grow or learn, or those types of things, to be able to get to this future vision that I still don't even know what I want to be when I grow up. So I don't know, because it's just evolving along the way, emerging along the way. But really realizing that we have to just start saying yes to possibilities and yes to things that scare us. And I think that really also comes back to this concept around the futures and how we want to hold on to what we always thought it was supposed to be. And so what we should do, or what we, anything. And so I say a lot now, and like looking back, is say yes to small, we say yes to things that feel scary, but they're safe in certain ways. And you grow your yes muscle, and you grow that sense of being more brave in uncertainty and more brave in things. And how this one came about is I was at a dinner party, and I ran into a woman here locally who's another family business owner, and said, "What's next on the bucket list?" She said, "Everest." I'm like, "Are you summiting?" She said, "Base camp." And I said, "Can I go?" Like, it just came out. Like, I had not really thought about it. And then I was like, "Oh, shoot." And she's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yes, I will." So, I mean, it took about 3 weeks, and I officially signed up to do it. And it was, I would go again tomorrow. So if there's people listening who are interested, ping me, because I did not speak to anybody who had gone before. So it really was then being brave in that experience. But it was truly, and people said, "Was it life-changing?" I said, in the end, it really was actually, I feel more in my skin than I already knew. It was confirming. I feel very good about where I'm at in this chapter of life. And I could see kind of what you were saying.
That's such a gift.
As this phase, I'm good. I'm good in my skin. And it feels so amazing to go out and explore the world and learn so much out there and push my body in a way I haven't before. But I also can see how it can be life-changing, and
that's amazing.
Being so fully present in the world. So it was definitely an amazing experience.
It's like that's a great lesson too. It's like, awesome. I think, whether it's social media or the comparison game that we find ourselves in, regarding the present, the past, or even the future, it's dangerous. And I think we set these expectations of these potential experiences, and that, it's going to be life-changing, and that is a double-edged sword, right? 100%, and so it'll prevent you maybe from doing things. It'll, make you disappointed if it doesn't sort of come out the way that you had imagined. Right. My dad once gave me some advice, and he said, if you are at a situation where you have 2 paths to choose from, always choose the one that scares you the most between the two. And I followed that advice throughout my career, and it led me through some unconventional doors that had I not gone through them, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So, I think we talk about foresight requiring courage, and again, I just think it's so wonderful. Maybe it's not for everybody to do the Everest thing, but again, it's not about doing what someone else is doing. It's about the lessons from it, right?
Yeah, and I really think it's interesting of just then for leaning into, and this is something I've grown this skill over the last 10 years of saying yes to things. And again, that's where the starting small goes from. And even I'm sure for you, if you took the path that's kind of was the most uncomfortable, scared you the most, the more you do it, I then on this trip, because I had never done any altitude. And so we went up to 17.5. I'd never done 14ers or anything like that. And then going into a third world country, it is the 17th poorest country in the world. And if you watched on Netflix that 2015 avalanche that just killed so many. And so thinking, what if there's an environmental or something that happens? And then what happens if my body can't handle it? So I just then, when I was thinking about saying, yes, you can let fear stop you from doing it, or you could sit in that uncomfort and say, what am I truly scared about? And what are the possibilities? And that's then really where I think this future incorporating and integrating futures thinking into your daily lives. I just said, what happens? So then, okay, worst case scenario, my body says no, then I am fully committed to turning around. Nothing is worth my health and safety and my coming home to my family. And then I just paid for some extra insurance of the military people come in and grab you out if there's a natural disaster or whatever happens, so you would then at least have a number. Air Force. It doesn't help guarantee that you can't get hurt or those kinds of things, but there are things you can do. And so I think with the futures thinking also is just saying, what are the possibilities? And then how can I start to prepare whether they're going to happen or not? And that's then taking this way of thinking and applying it to the adventure, that it really starts to not negate fear or negate whatever, but you feel more prepared for the potential what ifs. Resilient. And the resiliency. Yeah.
It's a great example. I mean, sometimes when you're trying to bring others along in this foresight journey, even it feels like you're asking them to climb Mount Everest. I mean, it honestly does. It's so interesting because when we did our work with the Metro, the CEO from the Metro gave us an incredible gift in that one of our final meetings that was recorded, he opened up the meeting with this beautiful testimony to us, talking about how we've helped them. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, when you're climbing Mount Everest, when you're going to the future, it's always great to have someone who's been there before. And so I just think that there are great parallels here that when, listen, if you're on this live stream, we know you already get this, whether you've been formally trained or not, you're listening to this, you're interested in this, you get it. The trick is, how do we bring others along? And so understanding the psychology of the fear of the unknown and risk and all of that represented by this experience you had at Everest is I think great lessons. We talk about emergence. It's hard to embrace emergence. It's hard to embrace the volatility of our world. How do we help people feel more comfortable with that? So
it's super powerful. I think this is a good place to segue and talk about, and I was sharing with both of you earlier that we recently, earlier this week, we did a webinar with Cheryl Deutsch and the group in New Zealand, and the Heart, Head, Hand webinar. We're going to release the recording of that in a couple of days. But I started off by reading a poem, and I was just sharing with everybody. I said, look, I'm going to tell you 5 words that you might not relate to futures and thinking and foresight very often. Because I think a lot of people hear foresight, futures thinking, and they think planning, and they think, results, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the words that I shared were ancestral, biological, psychological, sacred, and generational. And then I asked everybody, I said, just sort of rate this. What do you,
how often do you think about these things? How often do you
think of these things, And another one of my favorite philosophers, poet, writer, Sophie Strand, she's famous for saying, others have said this as well, but I just love the way she puts it, so beautiful. She says, in nature, movement is the proof of life. When something moves, it's alive, and that means it also transforms. And so, if something's not moving, if something doesn't move, if it doesn't transform, then it's dead. It's not alive. And so, transformation is a sign of a living thing, and all living things transform. And I just love that. I love everything about that. And of course, that's why that's one of the reasons why we named our retreat the Transformations Retreat, which we held our first one in 2022. And we were so fortunate to have the two of you there. And
it's amazing.
And I also don't know if you remember this, but a side note, Yvette spent a great majority of that retreat just serving people lasagna and running up and down the mountain.
Listen, I had a walkie-talkie and I was happy. I was very
You
happy.
did have a walkie-talkie.
It was very exciting.
You were happy the whole time.
I was really happy. I was super happy.
But she didn't get to talk a lot. So at the dinner at the end, she cut loose.
Oh my gosh.
And I'll never forget. Katie was just falling out of her chair because she was like, what is happening right now?
Because it's amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of pent up excitement. Yeah.
But I just want to, I sort of want to talk about that. I mean, you mentioned Nora Bateson's poem Kinky, and also the zombie caterpillar. And both of those in a recent interview that we haven't even released the whole interview yet with Nora. We will right after the first of the year, because I want to make sure it didn't get in the way of anything else. And it's an 1.5 hour long interview I just did with her. But we did release 2 little pieces you can go find on my LinkedIn.
Did we release the not suitable for work part?
No.
I don't.
Oh,
no,
friends.
We haven't.
Friends.
Not suitable for work.
Not friends.
Just
friends. Wow,
it.
Nora, like she went for it. No, she went for it. I'm not gonna steal it, but just know when that comes out, when that emerges, y'all need to click on that link real quick and make sure you're using your headphones.
I mean,
headphones.
We have died so many times. No, it is so good.
I was listening from outside the studio, and I almost fell out of my chair with what she said. So
I love it.
Anyway,
it wasn't just about she wasn't cursing.
No, it wasn't really cursing. No. It was something.
Anyway,
she has a way of that zombie caterpillar, that one has like hit me. And so I can only imagine. I mean, the way that she can articulate and talk about and what things are. So I'm highly intrigued.
She references something in pop culture and does not just pull any punches, does not pull any punches, and just says what it is. And again, it's not something that you hear talked about a lot.
Nope.
And it should be. And it should be. So there you go.
So I see Angela just dropped in the chat the link to, I was saying that we released a small clip of just Nora reading to me the zombie caterpillar, and she put that in the chat. But this poem is so cool. It's this little caterpillar and in the meadow, and then one day it realized that transformation was upon it. It was supposed to turn into a butterfly, but it didn't like that idea because it was used to being a caterpillar and it wanted to stay a caterpillar. And I love this one. I think to me this is the most powerful line in the whole poem. It says, it knew life as a caterpillar was a proper and good life and could not yet understand what it would be like to not be a caterpillar. And so it began to bargain with transformation, as if that's something that we could do.
Oh.
And it's just so powerful. And so going back to the Sophie Strand piece, all things that move, transform, all living things transforming, and attending the Transformations Retreat, I would love for both of you just to take it from here and talk about, what does transformation mean for you in terms of a family business and attending the retreat and why that's such a powerful element of what we do in terms of foresight.
Oh my God, there's so many. And I know that there's just so many different pieces. I will say, just in general, experience, I would say the conference, the retreat, whatever the experience that we had, it's so hard to explain. But being in nature, and I remember even texting my husband afterwards, I'm like, this afternoon we're going forest bathing. And I'm like, it's such a random, I was like,
my favorite thing
not like bathing naked, any of the things, but being there in nature and watching how, and so even just thinking about, and we're so in our world and moving and doing, but so where we could step back for a second and watch transformations happening in nature and happening without fighting against it. And when you do fight against it, that visual of that zombie caterpillar is just unbelievable. But we sat there and watched these trees and watched them growing and watched them combining of what they're doing, and so different. And there's just so much beauty that came out of being at that place. And so then, and allowing space, I think emerging, I think it's kind of our buzzword there, but what was beautiful about it was allowing enough space to be in it, to think about it, and then think like, how do I want to apply this back into our lives? I mean, I have so many thoughts about different pieces, but I know you had even kind of written a piece on
and I think even trees. And then I'll talk about that. Everything I think in nature, the ways that it happens. So I was so excited to be there. And something we were chatting about before we got on camera was also around kind of the ego that comes in. And even we were talking about being in the room with, the level of expertise and the brilliance of the people there. There is this innate sense of imposter syndrome that happens when you do that. But then going back to what we were talking about earlier in the conversation is what we've always respected and appreciated about the community in which you've created is that actually it is for everybody. And it's not based on all these different skill sets. It's what are the virtues and the characteristics and the ideology and the values, and that and really it comes down to openness and curiosity and passion, because we all actually I don't want to be at a table with everybody who has the same way of thinking. I want disruptive conversations, things that make me uncomfortable, things I hadn't thought about it that way. And one of the big lessons I took from being in nature is, as Jenny was saying, the trees, if you watch all those trees and how they're growing, the other trees don't judge those trees for going this direction or this direction. They stand around and support each other. And it can seem so far out there, but it truly is just organically happening in nature always. And anywhere that we walk and see, like the cracks within the concrete, if you're walking down in a city and watching the little weed that's coming out, it is determined to grow no matter what. And we don't judge that little plant for picking this desolate place to grow. And I think that is one of at the core what I took away. And I was sharing before we got here, and I think as this relates to family business, but Yvette, I appreciate what you were saying, that I think it relates to either all business or just in general. But I had gone before this retreat, I had gone on a backpacking trip and reflected on the lessons I learned from Mother Nature as it relates to family business, and wrote, there before me was a fallen tree covered in lush, vibrant green moss and hundreds of baby mushrooms scattered across it. And I was struck by the fact that while this fallen tree may no longer be living as it once was, its legacy continues to provide a strong and necessary foundation for a new life to begin. And as we hold on to something so strongly, whether that's what our own personal view of our own personal future, of what we believe our business, whatever business it is, or we go bigger to our systems and the ways of thinking. My was, there's got to be a better way to educate our youth when I went through the first program. So if we can dismantle how education is today, because it's fundamentally not working, but at the higher level, we truly all believe that we should empower our youth to have the best future possible, that we want to leave the world better for them than we could have even imagined, and help them as a part of, which is another foundation that we took away from the transformations, is have it also be a participatory future, that we don't need to just be those of us. Why don't we have our kids helping to come up with ideas on how we should be creating the future? And 30 years, they're going to be running it. We're going to just be passive people sitting there. Hopefully they're going to be tucking us in with some little warm blankies and bringing us tea, right? Why aren't we changing it? Because we've empowered them with so many tools and resources with the internet and AI as it's starting to emerge. Why can't we give our youth the grace and the privilege of being a part of transforming that? So
that's right.
That's a whole lot there, but I think at the core is, if we can look around us and see the beauty of nature and the natural evolution that happens with that, it's showing us that beautiful things emerge from when things pass and decompose, and it funnels and feeds the next phase of what it's supposed to be.
That's
and
right.
If we can release, the ego, I think a lot of it comes down to ego.
I think you're exactly right.
It's natural. It's why we say natural foresight. It's like
it's natural foresight.
We don't need to overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
It's around us.
Actually, we'll completely miss. One of the things we were sharing during that webinar, is that it's not the goals and the outcomes that really are the most important thing, but we become this goal outcome oriented system society, and really the goodness is in what's bubbling up underneath. And if we structure and plan the future so rigidly, we're going to miss the goodness. We're going to miss the future. And that's what's been happening. It's like we just keep trying to double down. Around here we say chicken on a chicken because way back
Kentucky Fried
Chicken made the chicken sandwich
KFC
where it was
now. Don't say
KFC.
that's
Right. Yeah. So they had the chicken sandwich where it was like the bun was a piece of chicken, the two buns were chicken, so chicken doubling down on the chicken on a chicken. But it's like we double down with data, we double down, it's like, and it's that's not a knock on those things. It's like the lens that we look at things through. Are we going to look at data and planning through the lens of the overly systemized piece? Are we going to look at it through the emergent piece and allow it to be defined that way? And when we do, we see possibilities that we would not have seen otherwise.
I think I mean, the retreat was interesting, and again, like, I know you were joking, but I wasn't in a facilitator role in that retreat, which was actually really nice for me to step back and see you and Ashley sort of guide these incredible leaders from across the globe through this experience. And I think I appreciated it so much because I'm actually excited that there's been, over the last few years, much more of an interest in transformational futures, and not just using this for organizations, which is great, but really challenging the status quo, having those uncomfortable conversations. But sometimes as practitioners, we don't know where to start with that. Like, we have an inkling that this is what we want to expose ourselves to. This is what we want to learn about. And there's great leaders that teachers like Nora Bateson, but sometimes those writings and readings can be a bit out of reach for us, for the just the layman like ourselves. And having someone like you and the rest of the cohort come together in that environment, in that very safe environment, unplugged environment, where we could slow it down and just, huge. You said, really see what's around you. Like, I just think it's we're so go. And really the timing of it was really interesting in the midst of, sort of quote unquote, the end of the pandemic, coming off of that extreme situation. We're all online, we're all working from home, to then be on the side of a mountain in California. And it was just, we're never looking to repeat an experience. Every experience is unique. So the one we're doing in Maine next year will be different, will be unique. But in part it will be that way because it's not in that same time that we did. It was so unique. But
we say all the time that the holistic foresight dynamics foundation is just that. It's a foundation for others to build upon. Like I see Halson saying in the chat, intergenerational futures, and Swath's work, and Kat's work. We were just with Kat a couple of days ago, and so those are the things to be built on top of that.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to, I know we, a lot about the nature, and the big thing, which was some of these things are they're so complex, but they're so simple, like of how and when you introduce that whole holoptic, and I know with the dragonfly of what that is, and it's so beautiful. And you can talk about it a whole lot more, but of having eyes all over and to be able to look all different directions, and I think actually I was rereading my
that's the journal, the dragonfly journal.
Oh my gosh, there were so many things that I was reading last night, rereading, going back through there. But you know, the mammal, like we've got eyes that go this direction. And you know, I think it's so funny. My kids always say, "Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head." That's what their teacher says that. But it's this holoptic, and how can we only because you just dropped that word, and sometimes it took me a while that then you had to say things multiple times for me to get it. But to be able to look from all different lenses of what these things are and to then see different perspectives. I think the participatory future, because that one took a while there of having different voices, which that comes back to then McKinsey and who we are at our core, that we think all voices matter. We want to listen to different perspectives of what's going on. And that came into that holoptic. And then a second piece that was really big in there was, which I think we talked from the very beginning, but we need to change the narrative on things. Like as we're stuck in holding on to legacy and in family business, even that term family business, that's a world we're thick in, you know, is it though is it a family enterprise? Is it family, as families are changing, as dynamics are changing, as generational, like, does it have to be? And I think a lot of times there is struggle in family business, and that's why we launched Next Gen Collaborative, of thinking that we have to keep the business the exact same. But if we loosen up that term of the family business and it's creating generational wealth or generational opportunities, like do our kids going into the third generation, do they have to be sending out surveys, or do they care about that voices matter and it can evolve into its own thing? Then back to your beautiful example of, we took what Dad started and it can emerge, but that business, I don't love that it's family business. We got to change the narrative. But in order to do it, because I can go all these things, we needed to, and that's kind of your CLA, we had to unpack and allow space to say, what are the myths, metaphors, what are the things that we're holding so tight to come back up? But we have to slow down enough in order to change the narrative. And then once you change it, you can't unsee it. Like now, I hear people talking, it's like, I can't unsee it, but it takes a while to get to the point of
and I think one other point too that you said, so it's a little bit of a different, but as you were saying, that slowing down, I think something too that's so valuable in that retreat. And then what I also truly experienced, because I was gone for 20 days, so I was on the mountain for 18 days. I deleted email and all social media. My phone stayed on airplane mode. Whenever I could get access to Wi-Fi, I would just ping in with WhatsApp to check in with my husband. That was basically the only connection to the outside world. And that was by choice. There was definitely people choosing to do that, but wanting to be completely present in the moment to see then what emerges out of it. And I think that value of being able to do that, I have gone through the challenge of then re-emerging yourself, as you said, with these ideas and these concepts that come out of an experience like the transformational retreat. And then something like what I went through in Nepal is then that intentional. And it was actually, I looked back at some things that were kind of key takeaways that we had written about after the transformation or after the workshop. And transformation happens by choice was one of the things that I had written, is that change is inevitable and it's constantly emerging, but we then can choose how we want to transform. And that is part of what I love about the work that you guys do, is it's encouraging us to integrate this way of thinking into our own internal process and transformation, while we may or may not in each season or chapter help to transform the businesses and systems that happen around us. But at the core, I believe, like what I've taken out of all of the work that we've done and the more we've talked to people, is our true passion is helping to inspire people to think differently about their own lives and then the impact that they make on the world. Because sometimes, like you said, it can feel so big when we're wanting to get into a business to say, how can we transform education or like these systems? So then people choose to stay as the caterpillar because that it feels too big. So I think that for us, it's that helping to inspire people to say it just starts with you. And if anything else, then through your own way of thinking and your own changing of conversations, we will then start to change the ethos of the community and society because enough people are thinking that way. So when it feels overwhelming, just think with it. Like, I think that that's a big thing.
There's
Fireworks are going
I
off.
know there's
Fireworks
so
are going
much
off.
goodness, and we could have a whole nother. We need to have a series with the sisters for sure. But like, I'm struck by two things, like because you talk all the time about love, and the family component has really struck me. I mean, lots of people know that my daughter has worked within our firm for a number of years now, and there's a lot of family connections, but I'm struck by this idea of the human family, right? And just that when you I love this idea of like touching one person, and you're so good about this. Like when we say the future is about people, we mean it in different dimensions, but Frank is so good about reminding us in our firm that when we say the future is about people, it's about inspiring and reaching out to that one person. And if you imagine that we are all part of the same human family, then the lessons that you've shared around generational wealth or generational transfer or generational thinking applies to everyone. It applies to everyone at a microcosm or at a macrocosm. I mean, I'm hearing this, and it's like that's what's shooting for me.
I'm already like antsy a little bit here because like what Jenny and Katie just said over the last 5 minutes, I already forgot half of it. And I'm like, I've got to go back and listen. I got to go back and listen already. But I know, like the general gist of it, that was coming from me is that it's so important for us. And this is what happens at the Transformation Retreat. But of course, well beyond that, is that we want foresight and futures thinking to be something that's inside people, not outside of people. And our world and our systems are, built to be like, show me the number, show me the good, show me the beef, where's the beef and all this good. And it's like really foresight happens inside. We relate it to time and space, but transformation is about foresight being an experience. And I always go back and quote Rilke again, because in writing to the young poet, he said the future enters into us in order to work itself inside of us to transform itself before it comes out through us. And exactly what you were saying, it's like, how do we change the narrative? Jonathan Rowson and Daniel Schmachtenberger recently, were talking about we need a third attractor, with the other two attractors being right now that are in the zeitgeist. It's like dystopia and the polycrisis, which are both like, the end is nigh. Yeah. And it's not that we don't face a lot of problems, because we do, and nobody's trying to ignore that. But the whole point is like, how do we actually, there's no going around it now. We have to go through it. And how do we go through it? And the way we go through it is with a third attractor. And that third attractor really is this idea of abundance, not in material goods, but internally. How do we really have agency internally? How do we change from being to becoming? And this is, what you were saying. We talk about this, and it's the reason why we say that foresight is a technology of care, empathy, and love. I don't think people really quite grasp that fully. I probably don't either. But it's because if we care, that's about the future. I care what happens. I care what's gonna unfold. Right? That's the future. If I have empathy about where things are going and how you're doing as a group, as your family, as people, that's future. To love means not to love in the moment, to love people that are beyond me, and to love what's coming, and to love what's going to unfold. That's the future. Those are the technologies of the future, and that happens in here, not externally.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to implement or integrate foresight, if you're listening to this and you're a corporate practitioner, or you're an organizational futurist, or I pray for you if you're a governmental futurist. I light a candle every day for you. I promise you. Regardless of what your scope is, if you're thinking, how does this relate to me? Trust me when I say that if we can get people to embrace this at an inner level and with the things that we've talked about, then that will make adding it to our organizational structures and challenging our current systems. That's the only way to make that happen. Yeah. And so when we get past let me add this to my 5-year plan argument, let me staple this on, let me attach this on, let me see if I can get this sold. If that's the language you're using, you need to back it up, and you need to find the people, find the friendlies, find the people that you can talk to. And we see them every day in our programs. So whether it's a retreat or a foundations program or something online, this is, this is where you can start, and you
So
can find
powerful.
those people, you can find a way to talk to them, to bring them along. But anyway.
Well, and once you start getting in there, I've realized too,
Yeah.
this world is so opening. I mean, and so welcoming, I guess I should
Yeah.
say. But I want to share just real quick. We were chatting with a
Yeah.
really good friend of ours, Torsten. He's out in North Carolina, and he's amazing, incredible in the family business research space. But we were having this conversation with him yesterday, and hopefully he does not mind that I share this. But he was saying, just at the individual level, so he's a teacher and a professor, and he was saying that one of his students was saying something about struggling, and this could be any teacher, so take it outside of him, but any teacher out there. And if a student is struggling and said, I think I need therapy because I'm not working in the system and this is not working, and nothing wrong with therapy or any of this, but he made this comment. He said to the student, have you ever thought that maybe you're not broken, the system is broken? Because I think it's Nora, like how, and so it was a beautiful thing that they just reframed this thing, and this student to say, hey, listen, maybe you're not the problem. Maybe the system's a problem. And I literally looked at him, and I just said, because I know he's very in with Nora Bateson and a lot of that work. And I just said, would you have thought of that however many years ago? And he's like, no, like this is and that one conversation, I bet changed that entire trajectory of that person's life. And
Yes.
Life.
Yes.
I just want to say, like, because the system's broken, and I mean, I have friends that are stuck in the corporate world, and they're like, why aren't I doing well? And I said, you might not be the problem. The system is, and it doesn't mean, and there's a bazillion, and we even say, like, our company is great, but it's not meant for everybody. Like, you might just need to be in a different system, or you might not be the problem. So it's just shifting this thing that everyone just thinks it's me. No, maybe not. Maybe the system, and not maybe, the systems are broken.
Yeah.
So just flat
Sure.
out. So there's so much depression and sadness and whatnot, that it's just this reframe. So and that was one person in this big system. And I thought it gave me chills talking to him. He's changing the trajectory of what education looks like, one student at a time.
And don't get discouraged, because we know the systems are broken. That shouldn't discourage you, because again, like, we all have the agency. Again, not true that everybody in the world has the agency, but they should, and we're working on getting more people
it's the system again, right?
But I think sometimes people throw their hands up and they're like, well, the system is broken, there's nothing we can do. And that's not true. We created those systems, so we can destroy those systems and rebuild.
Yes, we can. And
he's fired up.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because like it's just something to harp on all the time. Because we hear people say, like, oh, we're wired to fear, we're wired to compete. No, we are not. The system actually has wired us that way, and but we are not wired that way. Just like plants aren't wired that way, just like the wolves and the whales aren't wired that way. Why are we the only living thing in the cosmos that isn't wired this way? You know why? Because we're not wired that way. And that's what getting to nature and all of that was really all about. Just like talk about the dragonfly for a hot second here again. That's the power of that, right? It's really being able to have these all those little nodes on the top of the holoptic eye of the dragonfly coming together to make a unique whole, not losing their diversity, but bringing all that diversity to the table that creates this understanding of my diverse part fits into the unique whole this way. And as long as I keep that, then it really fits in. We're not separated around the world. And so then when that's created, we understand that's a cosmic reality. And that's why we go forest bathed, right? So that we really understand, look, the rest of the nature works this way. Why aren't we working this way? And to help people to understand that we can be this dragonfly's eye, and that we can create this unique whole. And in that we can look up, down, sideways, backwards, and all of this at the same time, and perceive what wants to emerge, not what we're trying to force to emerge in this system, but what wants to emerge through love and empathy and care. So
and can
I think he's onto something.
Can I just say too that I think that that these experiences, whether it's the retreat or foundations or even just these conversations, allow us, can I just say, to be a little selfish. And what I mean by that is that
I think it's
is that we don't really have an opportunity necessarily in our day-to-day lives to have these conversations and to have these experiences and to share our thoughts around these ideas and to to strengthen ourselves. Like we learn out of every program, we always learn from the cohort. It's definitely a communal experience. And so I think it's part of self-care as a foresight professional, as someone who attempts to do this every day, to give yourself the ability to be in these rooms and these experiences, right? I mean, what do you all think about that?
Yeah.
100%. I mean, we were just talking about wanting to go back through the foundations course, and I was like, well, we can't go through the foundations course because we've already taken it, but it's different every time.
As you, because you got to be at the burrito bar, your sister did not, so she definitely should go in person.
I didn't do it in person. The retreat was my first in person. I did the 2 other programs online, so it does change things.
No, stepping out, making space for this and these conversations. Every single one of these, we are better, fired up, excited to bring this back into every single thing that we do. And we don't do, I mean, just kind of as a side note, like we don't do specifically like this is just a futurist project. I mean, we can, but you know, we have a multitude of things and we're weaving this into all of the projects that we're doing. So just to clarify too, to do this, you don't have to be a futurist, the only thing in your title. How do we weave this in? But then we get caught back up in the system and the way of thinking. So this is good for us to come back, have these conversations. We're like, oh, right. And so it's just as, we just say it's a breath of fresh air.
It really
it's a
is.
Reminder.
Yeah.
It's just good for my soul, these kind of conversations.
A lot of the work that we do at Next Gen Collaborative and working with Next Gen, and really it's Next Gen family business leaders, but really just the next generation in general, is anchoring on the concept around personal legacy and really wanting to be able to do some work to be able to say, what do I want my legacy to be? And what is the impact that I want to make in the world, and how do my values and characteristics show up?
Be intentional.
And being then intentional, I keep thinking, like, as we're going into this season of life, everybody says these are my New Year's resolutions and my goals. And I'm really starting to realize, but a lot of times are they anchored to something bigger for yourself? And I guess part of that challenge or opportunity, something I would say in response to your question there, is then saying, if this is, I want to impact and inspire other people to think differently, then you have to create space for you to have time to think differently so that you can continue filling other people's buckets. And so then it does become a part of self-care. But I think it's also that opportunity for us to think, which is a part of the futures thing, is what is my bigger vision? And we, in this world and society of speed, we don't pause to think about that. And so that's, with us, we were chatting with some 2nd-gen family business people, and they were saying, well, our mom isn't ready to leave, and and we finally just said, what do you want your future to be? And they said, but this is what my mom It's like, no, you're at your point in life, and really at any point in life, because then I see personal legacy as in living, breathing something. It should continue to evolve as you evolve, but it's something valued and something. But if then we're following someone else's path and future, and then we're staying in the system. And so that comes back to the agency and those kinds of things. So I think that I think to inspire anybody listening, if this way of thinking inspires you and you want to inspire others by thinking differently and having just different kinds of conversations, then you have to put that as a non-negotiable on your calendar, and whatever that is, if it's meeting and having coffee with different people who think differently, being a community members to be able to learn from different types of things, or it's going to retreats and trainings like this. So I think it's really, that's what I would say, to anchor it to something bigger than even self-care, right?
Yeah, I love that.
To your bigger vision.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
again,
so
we always talk about this is a personal experience. Of course, there's so much written and talked about in terms of institutional, organizational foresight. It's the whole spectrum, friends, and it needs to shoot on all of those cylinders to be successful.
What we always say, and what the beautiful sisters are saying here is, it's like we work with companies. You guys work with companies all the time, businesses small and big, but we've tried. We've all tried. We've all been down this road where we try to change the business. And then like a year later, they go right back. The gravity of the system will pull you back in again.
Yes.
You don't change businesses. You change hearts.
People. Yeah.
And if you change people and hearts, then the businesses will change.
Yes.
And so we've all been down that road. And so when we make foresight just this external thing, trends and create a division and all this, it's gonna the gravity will pull you right back into the black hole again. It's about changing hearts, and that is the main thrust of futures thinking. That's why it's futures consciousness. We're not worried about futures readiness or futures proofing as much. It's about futures consciousness, aligning with the cosmic way of futures thinking, which is biological, psychological, and sacred. And I just love that.
Can you believe it's been 60 minutes already that we've been on?
Oh my God.
Live
No.
stream?
I think we need a whole retreat.
Funny you should mention that, is that there is a retreat. We're really excited. And I think, again, you mentioned this, a perfect time of year to have these conversations as you're hanging the tinsel, or you're lighting the candles, however it is that you celebrate during this very special time of year, with everything that's going on in the world. I think it's important to stop and reflect, and be mindful of the future as well. And so I think this was a very well-timed conversation, and it's just sort of a drop in the bucket. We'll continue these conversations. In the chat, Angela had dropped how to get a hold of our friends Jenny and Katie. So if you have an interest in the work that they're doing, both with family business and just with legacy in general, and that coaching aspect, please do reach out to them. We've dropped a couple of times, we've mentioned a couple of times the Transformations retreat that these folks were a part of, that was very, very special, and that's happening in Maine next year. Angela dropped that in the chat as well. If you're looking for other types of trainings, we will be announcing very soon that our foundations program that they have both also attended is going back in person in a really big way next year. There will be live online opportunity to join us, but there will be six, count them, 6 in person.
I know. I think we might need to map out when the calendar comes.
We might. There's literally no dates left in the calendar for next year because of this. It starts off in Mexico City, then we're off to Dallas, and we'll be on the road the balance of the year. And then again, that transformation retreat happens in the fall. So however it is that you want to experience the future, if you would like to trust us with that guidance, we'd love to be your partners in that. And we'd love to learn from each and every one of you.
Our friend Tamara Usher said, announce it to the world, but there hasn't been a formal press release.
I mean, the reason that we're able to go to so many places, we're doing several partnerships. So our Mexico program is in partnership with Change Consulting, and we're going to be designing the future of cities in Mexico City. I think the sisters might have something in Mexico City too, but we'll just tease
the week after. We'll you got to plan 2 weeks in Mexico City.
Absolutely.
2 weeks of futures thinking.
The balance of the year is going to have a future of cities sort of theme, but it's going to have different focuses. In Dallas, we'll be thinking about energy and other locations, but those locations, 5 this year, 5 next year, are all being done in partnership with Slalom Consulting. So we are futurists in residence with Slalom starting next year. We are bouncing across all of their amazing locations. That's why these cities are available
at the
to us.
Slalom offices.
So if you're a Slalom client, you'll have access to special rates, but it'll be open to the public. And we're firing up our freaking flyer mile accounts. We are.
You've been kind of, you guys were everywhere in the world.
Let me tell you, last week we were in Dubai. We were in Dubai last week. And so that was our first long haul journey since the pandemic. And
epic.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, we had been before, but man, that 15-hour flight after 3 years of living pretty still.
It still hit me hard.
I was getting to Kathmandu. It was the same thing. It was a 16-hour flight Qatar, and then another 6 hours to Kathmandu.
I can't complain. I wasn't at base camp.
No.
I was
I was okay. Look, I wanted to
have big, huge hiking boots sitting on the airplane.
I wanted to.
I'm just going.
we're out of time, but I will just tease out for the next live stream that, Frank had a moment on the flight back where, it was too long of a flight. So we had to have an intervention, but it's okay. He made it back. We didn't
You keep dropping these wild stories that we're going to need to push back up. He had a moment mid-flight.
I did not get banned from Emirates.
Thank goodness. Close. And he can thank me for that. I can think of two better guests for our first time.
Thank you.
That was so awesome.
We will be back again.
There's so many nice little clips. There's going to be lots of clips from this.
Yeah. So we'll be back again with our regularly scheduled programs starting in January. We'll continue to have guests throughout next year, I think, on the live stream and our podcast.
I feel like it's going to be Katie and Jenny.
Yeah. If you all ever have any questions, you could just reach out to us. Again, since this is the last one for this year, we'll just say again, happy holidays, happy new year to you two, to everyone that's listening. And let's make 2024 the best year yet as it relates to futures thinking. Let's really, hit the ground running in January and make a difference out there. I know you all are doing great work.
Amazing.
And we're excited to continue to help you on that journey. So thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.